Hey, yo, what's up, YouTube, man? It's your boy, Ashton Jackson, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Dallas Cowboys should attack these certain players in free agency just because we know that we have a boatload of needs that we have before the draft. And the Dallas Cowboys do tend to spend a little bit in free agency when they are having a new head coach. For example, when we had Mike McCarthy that first year, they brought in guys to try and help him with his first year. You know, they brought in guys like Don Terry Poe, Gerald McCoy, Everson Griffin, Clint Dix, Daryl Worley, things of that nature, right? Were they all positive additions? No. Did they stay the very next year? None of them did. They all were gone, right? But at least the Dallas Cowboys were trying to do something. But even when they brought in Dan Quinn, they brought in Malik Hooker, they brought in DeMonte Casey, J-Ron Curse, Brent Urban. They signed a couple of guys. Again, were they difference makers? No, but J-Ron Curse was really good in 2021 and 2022. Malik Hooker was solid for you in 2022. DeMonte KZ was okay and was a solid starter for you. So I think the Dallas Cowboys will do a little something in free agency. Will they go crazy and spend a lot of money? We're not sure. But I will talk about one reason why. If they do want to spend money in free agency, we'll find out. All you have to do is really make a couple of moves. But if they don't touch this contract and don't restructure it, I'm going to talk about that in this video as well. So before we hop into the video, I would appreciate if you guys would like the video, subscribe if you're new, comment, and share my video with anyone who you think will enjoy my content. For me, the Dallas Cowboys are not going to be big spenders in free agency. If you listen to any of what those guys had said, you know, from the previous interviews they've been doing from Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones, they said expect this year to be a lot like last year. And I will take their word for it because you got to think about last year, you know, that big quote that caught everybody by storm. Not everybody that wasn't locked into the Cowboys and wasn't, you know, tuned into all these great, awesome content creators that you find everywhere on YouTube, you know, Twitter, everything like that. But, you know, everyone caught into, you know, all in last year, but then everyone didn't hear Jerry say, you know, this is a soft rebuild year. And people didn't hear him say, oh, you know, Dak Prescott going to have to do more with less and things of that nature, right? I think that if the Dallas Cowboys do tend to not do free agency again this year, they will be selected in the top 5 of the draft. And if they don't do anything free agency and they have an okay draft again, which talked about on my videos before, that this is going to be a very bad football team. We will be picking top 5. But I do think that the Dallas Cowboys can make a little moves that won't cost them too much money in free agency. But I felt like if they don't resign it, you know, if they don't resign an Oso Odigizua, but they want to use that money to sign other players in free agency, I'll be fine with that. But also, if you don't sign Oso, you have no defensive tackles. You know, I do feel like we need a couple of receivers. I do feel like we need, you know, some depth pieces. But before I talk about the needs of the roster, I will talk about the one move that Dallas Cowboys do need to make, and that is restructuring Dak Prescott's contract. He's going to have like a $50 million cap hit this season. And if the Dallas Cowboys decide to eat that money, then I would fully guarantee that the Dallas Cowboys are telling you that they don't really care about the future years of Dak Prescott or just the future years of your head coach, and I think we'll just be heading into a rebuilding phase. I felt like if we restructure Dak Prescott contract, you restructure CeeDee Lamb, and you restructure Trayvon Diggs, and some of the bigger contracts on your deal, you re-sign Micah Parsons to a big deal, that creates money in free agency, and you create at least $100 million by making 4 major moves. But I felt like the Dallas Cowboys won't even touch Dak Prescott. It will be a bit of an indication that we're not going to go crazy in free agency. So, again, who I felt like the Dallas Cowboys should sign in free agency, I'm going to go down the list of needs, and then I'm going to go down the list of players that I did list. Wide receiver is a big need. I feel like we need a true wide receiver 2 in here, and I'm going to talk about some of these wide receivers, and I feel like the Dallas Cowboys can sign one and draft another wide receiver. That'd be a little bit better for us, right? But wide receiver is 1. Defensive end is 1. We need another person that can pair it with Micah Parsons. We need at least another nose tech, another 3 techs to back up Mozzie and Oso Odigizua, and I'm still looking to draft that position regardless. We're going to need help at corner because Trayvon Diggs is going to be out for the majority of the year. We don't know if we're going to bring back Jordan Lewis. So the only real player that you have at cornerback right now will be DeRon Bland. You have Kalen Carson, who I felt like wasn't ready for the moment last year. But we're going to find out because you have a second year to bounce back. But I'm not fully putting my chips into Kalen Carson just yet. I want to bring in some competition, see what that does for a kid like him. Hopefully it brings the best out of him. He's able to make the best of those opportunities. I felt like we need at least 2 running backs. I felt like you can double dip at running back in this draft. I felt like you can draft a running back. Then if you pair that up with one of the guys that you signed in free agency, I think you'll be fine. I think we need a better player at left tackle. I think we need better offensive linemen, interior-wise, specifically right guard. If Zach Martin doesn't want to return back to the team, if we don't resign Zach Martin, or if Zach Martin wants to retire, that's what's probably going to happen. We're going to need another right tackle. I'm sorry. We're going to need right tackle as well, but I think right tackle is going to be fine if you can, with the new offensive line, head coach positions and things of that nature, right? So, with Clayton Adams coming in from offensive line, from Arizona Cardinals comes in as your OC, and then former Kansas State offensive line coach coming in to be your offensive line coach, right? So I'm going to talk about offensive line, D tackle, like I said, middle linebacker. Again, you're not going to have DeMarvin Overshown. Are you going to be fully confident in having a guy like Maurice Luafau taking the field for majority of that season, pairing him with, Buddy Johnson? You barely have any linebackers on the roster that you feel comfortable with, because we already know that Damone Clark, it might get traded, or he might just get, released. Safety, I'm looking for a true free safety that can ball hawk and take the ball away. So let's get into it. Wide receiver. Stefon Diggs is my selection for wide receiver. I feel like you can bring him in. Why? Because he's a top talent in free agency. I feel like he just came off a torn ACL. So I understand how we feel about ACLs here, but we also know that if you bring in Stefon Diggs, let's say Cooper Kupp gets released as well. So if you bring in Cooper Kupp, or if you trade for Cooper Kupp for like a late day 3 pick, like next year maybe, and then you bring in a guy like Stefon Diggs, I like your wide receiver core. I know they're a little bit older and things of that nature, but then also if you can bring in a guy like, if you drop the wide receiver, whether that is Ted McMillan, if he falls, I don't think he falls, but if he does, that's one of the players that I do feel like that will drop out of the top 10, because I think teams will overthink this. And then he tore his ACL, and then he won't garner a lot of money, and then also he can have that storyline where he's playing with his brother, even though Stefon Diggs won't be playing with his brother this year. If we signed him to a 2-year deal, I wouldn't be upset. Maybe a 2-year, $10 million deal where he gets $5 million a year, and then if it makes sense and that's not a low ball type of contract for him, sure. But, I would love the Dallas Cowboys to bring him in. They can figure out the money, right? 2, Keenan Allen. I would love for Keenan Allen to come back. Keenan Allen did say the teams that he does want to play for, it's either the Chargers or the Rams. He just basically wants to play in familiar situations. He either wants to go back to Chicago or go back to LA. He's not really too fond of going anywhere else. So Chargers and Rams, they both make a lot of sense, especially if the Rams move off of Cooper Kupp and then pair him next to Puka Nacua. They really need that. And then also you look at the Chargers, they had a decent run last year, but their run could have been a little bit more satisfying for them had they added another wide receiver to separate outside of Lab McConkey and Quentin Johnston. I really do think that they needed Keenan Allen back, and he said he's willing to go back. And the Bears, aside of Rome Odunze being their best wide receiver last year, their second best wide receiver, really, to me, when I saw Bear games, was Keenan Allen. I know DJ Moore went out there. He was pretty decent, but I feel like some games there was games where Keenan Allen balled out. But let's say those 3 teams don't want him. I think the 2 LA teams, they make a bunch of sense to me. But what happens if they don't want them? Chicago's like, we're good, but now he doesn't have those options like he thought he would. I would love to bring in a guy like Keenan Allen. I know he gets hurt at situations, but bringing in Keenan Allen as your ideal wide receiver 2, but you let them know, hey, we're bringing you in here as an added weapon, but we're still going to draft another wide receiver, so that's why nobody that I list has hurt feelings about it. We understand it's a business. They understand it as well. So I feel if you be up straight with them when you're bringing them in on these visits, let them know, hey, we would love to have you here. We're going to give you this contract. If you accept this contract, we're letting you know that we're drafting another wide receiver. So that's why, we can make this a deadly trio. And I don't think there's a bunch of receivers that don't want to come to Dallas to play with, I believe, a top 10, top 12, top 13 quarterback. At his best, he's a top 5, top 8 quarterback. And, when he's having a decent season, he's top 10. But when he had the year like last year, people are going to quickly put him at 15, 16, whatever, right? So, playing with CeeDee Lamb, I think wide receivers will love that. So, Keenan Allen is another one. Deontay Johnson, that's one of the players that I talk about being up front with when you're bringing in these guys. Deontay Johnson has a false reality on the league because he thinks that he can come in and be a wide receiver, one in this league. He was damn good with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Big Ben Roethlisberger showed a lot of potential from him throwing him the ball, right? But I think Deontay Johnson needs to understand that he's going to come into this league, and you're not going to get you're a damn good wide receiver, but you are not CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, where you think you're going to get 20 targets a game. I would love to bring him in, but if you bring him in, is he going to if he's a distraction, whatever, you can cut him. But I'm thinking about Deontay Johnson just because, and the only reason why I'm talking about the reality he needs to understand, because he went to Carolina, they wasn't winning. They weren't throwing the ball that high, or they wasn't throwing the ball yet around the yard that he wanted to, and they ended up just trading him. So, he went to Baltimore. He was pouting in Baltimore, got cut, went to Houston. He started pouting when Nico Collins came back, and it became this whole story throughout the NFL. But that's an option. I'm not saying that I want him to, but that's an option. Tyler Boyd, you saw what he was able to do in Cincinnati. Hollywood Brown, I would love to bring him in. He was a very solid addition for the Chiefs. Sucks how the way their season ended. But Hollywood Brown, bringing him in would be very solid for you for the Dallas Cowboys. I would love to bring in a guy like him. He's played with CeeDee Lamb before, both OU guys. I would love for Hollywood Brown to be brought in. Joshua Palmer. These are the next two guys I'm naming. They're a little bit on the cheaper side. Dallas Cowboys can bring in and be viable wide receivers 3, or if, on a good night, they're a wide receiver 2. Joshua Palmer was a really good wide receiver for the Chargers in 2023 when, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen both went down. Tim Patrick is a very solid wide receiver, and he saw Ben Johnson get the most out of him. I can see Tim Patrick possibly going to Chicago if the Lions don't want to resign him. Defensive end, I would love to bring back. I would not bring back, but I would love to bring in Khalil Mack if the money makes sense. He still says that he's willing to play another year. He's not ready to retire yet, so I would love to bring Khalil Mack in. There's someone that can play the opposite side of Micah, that can be a guy that can get you 10+ sacks a game. And I need another bucket on this defensive line. We need to shore up this defensive tackle room for sure. But I also feel like the Dallas Cowboys, they need to get another bucket. When you're playing basketball, there's the guy that's Steph Curry, they can get all the buckets. But, the Warriors been struggling lately because they can't have another person who can definitely get them another bucket on the opposite end. That's why they got Jimmy Butler. You think about the other top teams in the league in the NBA that have really good players around them. It's they got that superstar, then they got another person that go get them a bucket. So you look at OKC with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's the main bucket. But then you look at the other one, you got Aaron Wiggins, you got J-Dub, you got so many guys on that team that can make plays. And I feel like with Michael Parsons is that Steph Curry like player. He's that player that can go get you 14, 15 sacks. He's that type of player. But I need another player on the opposite end that can go get him, that can get 9.5, 10 sacks and be a guy that can constantly get pressures, just like Micah, and somebody that can wreck your game if you're not paying attention to him. Again, Khalil Mack don't stop me from drafting a guy like James Pierce Jr. if the Dallas Cowboys like him, or Abdul Carter won't fall that far. But if he does, that's somebody I'm not stopping me, because more pass rushers, the merrier, right? But I would love to sign Khalil Mack if that's possible. He's still a game wrecker even at 34 years old. I'll bring him in. Matt Judon didn't have a great year with the Falcons, but we do have better talent around him in Dallas that, I feel like he can get a lot of one-on-ones and that he won't have to be the main pass rusher, because that's what he was in Atlanta. But you play with Michael Parsons, your life is going to be a little bit easier. And I would love to bring in a guy like Matt Judon if that's possible. Chase Young, again, he's going to be back on the market again. I would love the Dallas Cowboys to pick him up. He was a former second overall pick in 2020. We know the story with him. I would love to bring him in on the opposite end of Dallas, of Michael Parsons. You bring him in. This is a guy that can get you 8 to 10 sacks. And this can be a guy that you sign to a 1-2 year deal. And if things don't work out, you can trade him. If another thing doesn't work out, he'll hit the market. You get a comp pick. So I would love to bring in a guy like Chase Young. Azeez Ojulari. I think this is going to be a potential Sam Williams replacement or just another person that you have on the opposite end. He was a former top 70 pick in the 2020 draft. We've played against him before. He's a really good player. Did get hurt last year, but I love the Dallas Cowboys to bring him in. Malcolm Kuntz is a former Raider defensive end. He can get you 10 sacks and 10 sacks at the highest, and he can defend the run. I would like another person that we can bring in is our defensive line coach, Aaron Wycott, coached him out in the New York Jets, and now Solomon Thomas bringing him in as like your defensive end 3 to 4. I would really love that as an option. Running backs. These running backs that I list, they don't stop me from drafting an Ashton Genty and pairing that up with a Scatterbo sometime in the later rounds, or Devin Neal, R.J. Harvey, Dylan Sampson. There's Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Quinshawn Judkins, Trayvon Henderson. There's so many guys that I like at this running back room that if we draft at least one of them and pair them up with somebody in free agency, I would love it. Nick Chubb, hurt, been dealing with a lot of injuries, low risk, high reward. If you bring him in on a decent low contract and he can come in and provide something to you, you would love it. Again, I'm not breaking the bank on any of these guys, but I would really love a guy like Nick Chubb to come in. Aaron Jones is another one. Javonte Williams, former top 100 pick, dealing with some injuries. I think he just needs a new place of scenery, and I think if he comes in, it would make sense. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm only throwing out that name because Jerry Jones was raving about him after he had that one really good game against Houston Texans on opening night when the Chiefs just had won that Super Bowl, their first one of that dynasty, and he was saying, we were going to pick him, but no, you weren't. You were not going to draft Clyde over CeeDee Lamb, but he was just yapping, right? J.K. Dobbins, former top 100 overall selected player in that same draft in 2020, and then also dealing with a bunch of injuries. And, I think that if you can sign him in and bring him in here, I would love that for the Dallas Cowboys. Cam Akers, I'm still on that Cam Akers train. I still think that he's a really damn good back. He just needs opportunities. I understand that he was hurt. I know he did get hurt a lot, and that's why he hasn't getting the opportunities that he really wants. But somebody that I'm looking at, Jordan Mason, I would love Jordan Mason to bring him in, power back, downhill runner, and things of that nature, right? Offensive line, Ronnie Stanley, left tackle. Kevin Zeitler is a right guard. He was really good for the Detroit Lions. You bring him in, I think that can be your Zach Martin replacement. Jedrick Wills, left tackle, you bring him in. Will Hernandez is an option just because of now your offensive line coach and now your offensive coordinator, Clayton Adams. Clayton Adams having that background in Arizona and Will Hernandez playing for him. And Will Hernandez spoke very highly of a guy like Clayton Adams. And then right tackle, Trenton Brown. He's backup insurance. I'm not asking him to start, but I would love for him to be your backup if that's possible. Defensive tackle. I would like to bring in a guy like B.J. Hill, formerly from the Cincinnati Bengals. DJ Jones, formerly from the Broncos. Javon Kinlaw from the Jets. Again, another Aaron Wycott special if we do decide to bring him in. These are all 1-6 that I'm naming right now, right? Jonathan Hankins. If you brought back Zeke, I felt like you should bring back Big Hank. There was no bad blood between you guys. He just went and signed for the Seattle Seahawks for nothing. I think you should bring him in. I would like to sign a guy like Levi Onwuzurike, Derek Nadi. He's a one-tech, has Super Bowl experience. He's under 30 years old. I would love for the Dallas Cowboys to sign him. Tahir Tart, formerly from the Los Angeles Chargers, a young defensive nose tackle. I would love for us to bring in a guy like that can help us, right? Middle linebacker, Levante David. I know he's 35 years old, but if you have a vet like how you have for Eric Kendricks, and if you don't want to bring back Eric Kendricks, he doesn't fit the scheme or whatever the case might be, bring a guy like Levante David if he cannot stay in Tampa, which he should be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer for life. But I view him as that. But if he doesn't stay, I would love for the Dallas Cowboys to bring a guy like Levante David. Dre Greenlaw, you saw what he does when he plays against us, man. He's punching the ball out. He's hip tossing people. He's body slamming people. We need that on our team. That type of intensity. That type of, again, pedigree. This is a really good player that's played in a lot of big games. We need a guy like Dre Greenlaw in this room. Will he make a lot of money after torn Achilles, after coming back from a torn Achilles, not looking himself? I think you get a guy like that not on a cheap deal, but I do think the Dallas Cowboys, if the Dallas Cowboys want to resign also Digizua, but you want to sign in a couple one techs top of, help out the offensive, the defensive tackle room, maybe trade for a person and then still sign somebody, not sign somebody, I'm talking about either sign somebody from post-room first designation guy like a Grady Jarrett. If Grady Jarrett gets cut from the Atlanta Falcons and then you still draft a guy, that would make a lot of sense to help out these linebackers, right? But you got Dre Greenlaw. I think that if you can spend some money in free agency, this will be a great guy I would love for the Dallas Cowboys to sign. Was one of our weaknesses. I would love to bring him in if we can, right? Isaiah Simmons, linebacker for the Giants. I would like to bring him in, 6'4" linebacker, that hybrid safety linebacker type of guy, but he's found his role in the league being a linebacker. Kaiser White, he was part of that Philadelphia Eagles team that went to the Super Bowl the first time against the Kansas City Chiefs. I would love to bring him in. Robert Spillane from Vegas. I would love to bring him in. He's a really great run-stopping linebacker. Last but not least, for linebacker purposes, I would love to bring in a guy like Nick Bolton. Picked in the second round, was selected a couple picks after we selected Kelvin Joseph. I would love for the Dallas Cowboys to sign a guy like Nick Bolton. I really would. True Mike linebacker. You got him. Maris playing right next to each other. Then you bring in a guy like DeMarvin Overshown when he comes back from injury. I would love to sign Nick Bolton. If they gave me two options, right, and they say you can sign anybody you want, Nick Bolton would be my number one. I would love for if the Dallas Cowboys can make it work and bring in a guy like Nick Bolton. He will truly help your defense, and everything on that second level of your defense will be lights out in terms of your linebacker crew. And especially you get a guy like Maris Ufa that can learn from under him. That would be damn good, and I would love Nick Bolton on this team if we can make it work. If it doesn't happen, he signs to another team. He resigns back to the Chiefs because the Chiefs will make money for him. I would love it, but I will absolutely love a true linebacker, middle linebacker, sideline to sideline, that can fill in gaps. He's a short tackler. I would love the Dallas Cowboys to bring in a guy like Nick Bolton. Cornerback, Rasul Douglas, at 31 years old, played for a bevy of teams. I think this is a really solid corner that you can have. Meanwhile, until you get a guy like Trayvon Diggs back, really solid player. Stephon Gilmore, I would love the Dallas Cowboys can bring him back. Charvarius Ward, again, secondly, if we're going to spend a lot of money on a corner or just in general, if you said this, hey, you have your second option, I would love a guy like Charvarius Ward. He was already previously in the building on the practice squad of 2018, if people didn't know, but I would love for the Dallas Cowboys to bring in a guy like Charvarius Ward if that can happen, right? Dallas Cowboys get my last cornerback position that I would like to sign or player from that position is Asante Samuel Jr. The Dallas Cowboys had their chance to sign a guy like Asante Samuel Jr., right? Day two, I was very happy that we signed or that we drafted, Kelvin Joseph, but you know what happened there. But a few picks later, three picks later, it went to Asante Samuel Jr., and he had a hell of a rookie year. He picked off our quarterback. That was his first career interception. And then his second year, he had, 3 or 4 interceptions in one playoff game. He caught he caught an interception in the playoff game as well. He's a playmaking corner. I would love for Asante Samuel Jr. to be a Dallas Cowboy. If we can get a deal done, if the Chargers don't already sign him by then. But I would love Asante Samuel Jr. to come in. You get him. You get Deron Bland. And then when Trayvon Diggs come back, you can put Bland back in the slot or whatever the case might be, and we'll be fine. And that you'll have a lockdown secondary. And I would love if we can bring a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. I know he's 5'11", but damn it, he don't play like it. He play like he's 6'2". He plays well above his means, and I would love to bring a guy like that. Last but not least, a safety I would love to bring in just for competition and just possibly a person. I would sign him and I would start him. And that's Justin Simmons. I was already on that train last year. I would love for the Dallas Cowboys to bring in a guy like Justin Simmons, just because we don't care enough to draft a safety really high in the draft. So since we don't do that, I'd rather us just go sign somebody. Justin Simmons is still a guy that can take the ball away. Matt Eberflus had a press conference, and a bunch of our positional coaches, they did today, and they were talking about how, with Matt Eberflus, which what he did speak is truth. He did say that, he wants to take the ball away. He wants to stop the run. when you think about when he was either coaching defenses for the Colts, when he was defensive coordinator over there, or when he was the head coach over in the Bears. His defenses were top 10 in takeaways and top 10 in stopping the run. So bringing a guy like Justin Simmons that can pluck the ball away, Asante Samuel, pluck the ball away, Levante David, Greenlaw, Splain, Bolton Gold, guys that can command the defense, guys that can fill in run lanes, Javon Kinlaw, former top 20 pick in the 2020 draft. We'll love to bring him in. There's a bunch of guys that I like that we can bring in for free agency. And, if we can only sign, 3 of these guys, great. Whatever makes our life easier going into April. So that's about it for the video. Hope you guys have a nice day. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye.